Hey everybody, welcome back. That's the wrong save file, you fool. You gotta play on the second save file, everybody knows that. EZFB68SL. I got a really easy $1 billion idea for you. It's like a FB but better. That's right, Facebook. But better. I don't know how we're gonna make 68SL. You get to have a list of 68 songs, but if you want the 69th song, you gotta pay us $18 billion. Now, you might say that's too expensive. Only one person on planet Earth could conceivably afford that, and that's Amazon owner and world's richest man as of last year, Jeff Bezos. You would be correct, but all we gotta do is convince him. It sounds easy, right? Forget the Coca-Cola Corporation. You're trying to sell... I don't even think we want Blister. You're trying to sell, 3 billion Cokes a year to 7 billion people at an average price of like 75 cents depending on where you live. It's not 75 cents for a soda here. I still live in my head, I'm still like a can of Coke is $1, but in Canada that's not the case anymore. Probably like $1.60 or something like that. But it's a worldwide brand is all I'm trying to say, and that's why it's foolish. If instead you could tailor your efforts exclusively to selling one highly exorbitantly expensive item to a single billionaire, just think of the possibilities. Has anyone ever thought of this? I imagine what would happen is you'd sell to one billionaire and then you'd be like, well, if we could do that, we could sell to more billionaires, and before you know it, you got a company that's making like private planes or something like that. Okay. Dry Baby is decent. Game Kid, I actually feel like maybe we haven't had Game Kid. I know we have because I, look at the stats sheet, but it's an item I haven't seen that much, so just to be sure. Dude, I hate to go on this exact same rant last night, but you'll never guess what television program I watched last night. Tiny House Hunters? Nope. You Philistine. Tiny Luxury. Oh, there was a tinted rock, and yet I wasted my bomb on this nonsense right here. What's the difference between Tiny House Hunters and Tiny Luxury? You Philistine. It's like you don't care about art. Tiny House Hunters is a show on HGTV, the Home and Garden Television Network, where a group of people who are of sound mind go, I want to leave my normal size house and live in a tiny house. And the reasons for this vary. Financial freedom, fetishization of the minimalist movement. They presently live in a place they don't want to live in, but to live in a place they do want to live in is going to be too expensive because land is ridiculously pricey, so they're like, well, the only way to make it happen is live in a tiny house. Some reasons more valid than others in my personal opinion, but hey, I'm not the one on the show and I'm not the one who has to live in a tiny house, so my judgment is meaningless. They choose between 3 tiny houses, eventually pick one, filming ends, and then they sell it probably 6 weeks later and, cash the check from the Home and Garden Television Network. But anyway, Tiny Luxury is a show where people want to live in a tiny house, but they don't want to live in just any tiny house. They want to live in a custom-built tiny house that has some of the amenities of a normal house. I watched an episode last night of Tiny Luxury. I watched 3 episodes last night, but there were a couple in particular that struck me. One episode is a couple that was like, we don't like having a mortgage, we'd rather live in a tiny house. And I was like, you know what? That's a great reason. That is an actually fantastic reason to live in a tiny house. I'm not even going to take the Pokeball. Obviously, we should have just gone with Dry Baby, so be it. And I want to point out, lest this come across as extremely judgmental, I do the world's weirdest job as a living. Like, I'm in a weird subset where I think people, like, being a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, people know what it is now, where, 6 or 7 years ago, they didn't. Now they're like, yeah, okay, my son loves watching Ninja on Twitch, and I'm like, yeah, cool. I do like that, but, at a much, 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 much smaller scale. And I'm better at Fortnite. But, anyway, I digress. So I recognize I'm in a weird spot here, but I'm also in a weird spot because I don't even play different games most of the time. You know, you're watching me play Isaac. I played it for 6 years. It's crazy. People are like, you really watch this guy play the same thing over and over? And a certain subset of people are like, yeah. That's cool. Mostly for me, but I'm into it. So rest assured, I'm not trying to get in this like glass houses throw stones situation. But I do think there's some reasons that are better than others. Like, I don't vilify the idea of a tiny house because I have... Oh, you fool. Definitely want this. Because I have an outdated idea of, like, I want to live in a mansion. I do not want to live in a mansion. When I first moved to Vancouver, Kate and I lived in a place that was probably under 200 square feet. It was smaller than your average tiny house. We lived there for like 6 months. We moved to an apartment that was larger. And then after being in that larger apartment, we moved to a place in a nicer area that was much smaller. Our present apartment is probably like 600 square feet. I don't know what that is in square meters, which I'm embarrassed to say because I respect the metric system, but it's 600 square feet, larger than a tiny house, but not a mansion by any stretch of the imagination, and it's more than enough room for me, you know? But what annoys me when I watch this tiny house show, and I'm just being honest, is like this one couple, again, the financial freedom couple, more power to you, but then this other couple bought a tiny house for $250,000. And it's their money, it doesn't bother me, and it did turn out to be quite nice for a tiny house. But they do this little interview, and I understand it's all like a little bit made up for television. They did this interview, and they're like, well, what do you want to have in your tiny house? And they're like, well, I like the idea of a tiny house, but I gotta have a full-size bathroom. And you're like, well, I'm sorry. You know what, let's go angel deals again. I'm sorry, but you're getting a tiny house. As a result of getting a tiny house, you cannot get a full-size bathroom. Any bathroom, by definition, is going to be tiny, much like the rest of the house. Or like, I know that it's a tiny house, but I gotta have a queen-size bed, and I used to be a full-time chef, so I gotta have like a pretty nice kitchen. And I just felt for the builders of this house, because I'm like, they literally just asked for a house. Like, the house you live in right now fits all of the criteria, except it's not in Hawaii, which your new house is gonna be. But anyway, it's like, whenever they go into the house, they do a reveal at the end. And I feel like if you want to get how people actually feel, just listen to what they say, and then you'll realize that they believe the opposite. In every single episode that we watched, all 3 of them, which is probably about 80% of the show's entire runtime on Earth, no offense meant to the wonderful stars of the show. We have a bomb. Let's use that over here. The first thing every couple says when they go into their tiny house, it's so big. Let me stop you right there, Suzanne. No, it's not. The name of the show is Tiny Luxury. Your dining room table converts into a bed, and your bathroom makes you sit down in the shower to take a poop. It's not a large house. And that's okay, but, like, don't lie to yourself. The show is not called Large Houses, like, deceptively large houses. No, it's called Tiny Luxury. Some of the Tiny Luxuries, one of these houses, you're not going to believe this, is extremely luxurious. It had a 16-inch TV in it. Wow. Luxurious. I really like number 2 as an item, but I think we should reroll to try to get one of the items we're missing. Mostly because it's just not that good. Like, it's nothing to write home about necessarily. Deadeye, though, is potentially like a run saver. So, like, this run's not in an amazing spot right now. I'm willing to go for it. Again, if you want to live in a tiny house, I genuinely think there's good reasons, especially, you know, rest assured, I live in an area right now where to buy a house or an apartment or a condo in Vancouver, something like $1,200 Canadian per square foot. Not an exaggeration. If anything, that might be a little lower than the actual price right now, so I get the appeal of spending like 90 grand and having a house that not only can you live in, but you could like move if you wanted to. I kind of feel like if I was on that show, and they were like, why do you want to live in a tiny house? I'd be like, you guys, you've done this show for a long time, right? It's cheap. relatively speaking. It's like, that's got to be reason number one, right? I'm not going to try to pay you any lip service. I think we will take it. I do want to go to the curse room as well. And you know what? I think I might sack our deal with the angel chance, but let's see if we have to. Sometimes people go out. It's always like the tiny house, and I know I've ranted about this on one episode or more in the past. So you're probably like, oh, talk about something else, like, you know, fecal matter. But anyway, they always take it like one step too far, where it becomes unbelievable and insincere for me. They're always like, well, I hate my mortgage, and also society has a compulsion and an addiction to consumerism. And I'm like, I don't. More, you know, I don't disagree that there's some people like that, but I buy like a chicken Caesar wrap and a 400 milliliter bottle of Coke Zero a week on my way to class. There's no consumerist addiction here. I do order DoorDash more than I should, but it's not because I'm addicted to consuming. Well, it is literally, I'm addicted to consuming food, you know. It turns out that as a human being, I need caloric sustenance to keep myself, you know, alive and afloat here. But, I mean, I could also just eat stuff I buy from the grocery store. But it's a whole different thing, you know. See, I'm such a good debater, I've actually proved myself wrong. That's incredible. But yeah, they're always like, they take it one step too far. My life has become so complicated. So I thought I would just take the first step to simplifying everything by giving myself so little space that it makes even mundane tasks slightly more difficult to accomplish. NL, that's not fair. That's a misrepresentation of the tiny house movement. And I don't even... You know what? Take a half red heart, who cares? I'm not even... if you're an adult or two adults, and you want to live in a tiny house... Don't let me be a jerk, okay? Live in your tiny house, live your best life, and enjoy yourself. Let's go. The only time, and I wouldn't even say I get, like, mad, but the only time I kind of shake my head is when it's, like, a mom and a dad, and then one or two kids, and they want to live in a house that's, like, roughly the size of an average living room, and I go... You know, your life is your life, but your life also controls your kids' lives. It's not, like, the kid might think it's an adventure, but it's sort of, I mean, I'm not a parent, so it's very easy for me to say this and judge people, and I kind of feel bad about it, but, like, if you got two kids and you're raising them in a situation in which they literally can't have, like, any privacy, and you have other options, let me put it that way. If you don't have any other options, you gotta do what you gotta do. But if you're like, it's always been my dream to live in a tiny house, and I'm not gonna let my twin 13-year-old boys stop me, sorry you gave that up. Like, when they pop out of the womb, my partner yelling too soon, don't do it, reconsider, read some literature on the subject, you sure? Fudge it. It's International Players Anthem, in case you're curious. But you knew that already, hopefully. You know, that's when your kids should be able to, like, call the government and be like, just put me in an orphanage. That's not really, it's a terrible thing to say, but... Excuse, can I go to boarding school now? Because, my dorm room is larger than the master bedroom in my tiny house. So, again, rest assured, your boy NL does not fetishize real estate at all. When I was a kid, I lived in the same house until I was like 7. And then from the age of 7 to 17, my parents and I moved like 5 or 6 times. It's not even that much. And I didn't have to switch schools or anything, so I'm not complaining about it, especially like after the fact. But I hate it. My parents, I don't hate my parents. I love my parents, but they always do this thing where they like, and it's worked out for them, much to the, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Much to the detriment of, you know, the real estate market for people my age. They've turned a profit, but they like move into a place and they love it and they do a lot of work on it. And my dad is a handy dude. So they'll move in and be like, hey, we love this place, but I hate the floors. And then my dad will spend like, you know, a weekend putting in new floors. And then they're like, oh, but now the baseboard doesn't really look right. So they fix the baseboard. And they're like, oh, and you know, the furniture's nice, but we could really get some like cool furniture in here instead. And before you know it, they've taken a place that was like decent and made it amazing. And then they're not really like flippers. Like they don't want to flip it. But they just eventually, they're like, I miss the experience of kind of working on a house. I think I missed the project, and they move again. So they've moved, since I moved out in, I guess I moved out in 2006 to go to university, which seems like it's ages ago now, but in my head it's, oh, let's go, we haven't had it in forever, dude. And a nice little tiers upgrade, too. Although we won't get Mega Satan, we haven't had Brimstone in quite a long time. I'm just gonna call it like I see it. I'm just trying to think. Like, when I moved out in 2006, they stayed in the same house for that year. I came home for the summer of 2007. They were in the same place. 2008 or 9, they moved. 2010... I graduated from school, moved to Korea. When I came back, they had moved, and not only had they moved, but they were going to move again. So I helped them with the process of selling their house and moving. One more time, they moved into a place that they rented while they were building a house. And then when the house was built, they loved it. It was like their dream home. Gradually became a little bit more disillusioned with it. Moved again, one more time, to a rental, and then bought a condo and are presently living in that. And they're like, every time that they've done this, they say to me, this is the last time we're moving. And the first couple of times, you know, I was respectful. I hate this item. This item is actually bad. I'm taking a stand. I was like, yeah, I believe you. You're my parents. You're the life givers. 100%. Now I realize that's not how it goes. They love doing it. It's not a bad thing. The only thing bad about it is that they've convinced themselves they're not going to do it again. I think I haven't said this to them in such uncertain terms, but just accept it's not an addiction. I don't think that's not the right word that I would use for it, but oh, no thank you, sir. But you know, I'm a millennial. I respect that. You know, you gotta have a hustle, and this is your hustle. You know, you feel compelled to do it. You like the... I truly believe, as cynical as this sounds, there's a certain human element to... and, like, struggle is not really the word that I'm looking for here, but human beings like a challenge most of the time. I think when you get down to it, that's a very human thing. When things become too easy for a person, that's where they get into trouble, you know? You ever hear the expression, idle hands are the devil's plaything? I don't necessarily agree to that, you know, from a religious standpoint, because I have no idea what the connotations there would even be. But, you know, I feel like people are at their happiest when they're doing a tough task that fulfills them. At least some people. Some people are probably happiest, you know, on the beach. That's not me, though. So I understand where they're coming from. I think they should just stop trying to convince themselves that eventually one day they're going to find contentment in their real estate endeavors. You know, instead, in my head at least, what I think is like, just embrace the fact that the chase is what you enjoy about the whole house situation, and then it'll all become more crystallized there. But anyway, as a result, I don't even think this does anything for us here, but as a result of moving so much as a child, I hate moving. I anything to do with moving is Kate's domain. I think we want to buy the battery. There's no battery. Okay, see you later. And she'll tell you the same thing. Is like, I don't want to deal with it, which is a very immature response to it, but I'm just like, you know, you handle it, and I'm cool with whatever. My number one priority is I'd like to move as little... Oh, we're going to miss boss rush. I thought we were one floor deeper than we were. My number one priority is I want to move as little as possible. I have no desire to ever become a house flipper. To be honest with you, I can't watch HGTV except with a certain, like, Mystery Science Theater 3000 component to it, because it just makes me, like, it conjures up these images as a kid. All I want to do is hang out outside, you know, play catch, play All-Star Baseball 98, and then it's like, surprise, we're moving again, and I'm like, no! Are we at least moving schools? Nope, we're staying in the same district. No! Please! That means I have to keep seeing Malf again. God. Anyway. Again, like... It sounds like I'm being negative towards my parents. I'm not, I swear to you. Maybe when I was like 14, I was like, this is ridiculous. But now I'm like, I get it, you know? Canadian real estate's been on an unprecedented bull run for like 20 years, and you guys have made, you know, quite a decent chunk of change. And also had fun doing it. Probably brought you closer together as a couple as well, you know? Nothing wrong with that. It worked hard. It's not like they bought a house, sat on it, neglected to file an empty homes tax declaration, and then, you know, flipped it in 3 years for a 400% profit. Not that I'm talking specifically about what happens in Vancouver about 16 times a day. You know, there's some genuine labor in there. You know what? I think we go for it. I'm actually pessimistic that we're gonna be able to complete this fight in time to get to boss rush, but please! You... Literally, did you watch that? She stalled twice, and we missed it by a second. We will take this. Oh, we'll definitely take this. I think we'll just go for permanent Polaroid invincibility, and then take a little delirium just for fun. All right, this run is obviously set. But I just can't watch, like, HGTV. I swear to you, like, the millennial, like, home ownership thing, I play it up as a little bit of a meme, almost. Because it does suck that, you know, if you look at how property prices have gone up, I'm speaking specifically for Canada, versus, like, you know, what wages look like. You know, the buying power of what a dollar got you in 1980 versus what it gets you now, and then, you know, wage growth has stagnated in real money terms as well, when you factor in inflation, of course, cost of living. But at the same time, there are places on Earth where I think that's kind of the norm, right? Like, I always hear people my age that are from London, they're like, what do you mean in Canada and the US, like, you ever harbored the idea of purchasing a house? Like, in London, that's been undoable since, like, the 1700s. They're all owned by, like, you know, old money or a corporation or something, and it's just that it doesn't exist here. So, yeah, you know, I mean, society can go on without everybody in our generation being able to purchase a house. That's okay. But mostly, like, that's not what makes me mad when I watch HGTV. What makes me mad is just, like... It's not fair to say this, but this is where my brain goes. It's like, I just picture, like, a caveman coming back. Apparently that's my, Rorschach for whether something's acceptable behavior. Is like, if we found a frozen caveman from the pre-Neolithic era, which I believe is just the Paleo, I think, but anyway, yes... Yes. No. And they watched HGTV and they saw, like, a man who is, like, older than they will ever be because of modern medicine and, like, understanding nutrition and, you know, taking care of ourselves and not having to, you know, hunt saber-toothed tigers for sustenance on a daily basis. Just walk into a bathroom and be like, Yeah, it's something that very, in a sanitary fashion, handles all of my bodily fluids that this caveman doesn't even understand the implications of at the present moment. But I couldn't deal with this color, or this sink has gotta go. I think the caveman would just be like, maybe we shouldn't be working so hard to pass on our genes. Or maybe he'd be proud. Maybe he'd be like, I can't believe we managed to let this weak species of animals survive just due to the power of our genes. But I don't know, I just watch it and I go, you don't have anything else in your life you could be worried about? You're coming into this bathroom being like, I'm also always amazed that and I know that some of these, and maybe slash all of these, are scripted. Is there a course you can take where you learn all of the terms for interior decorating? Always like, hey, I'm Bob. I'm a 61-year-old plastic bag manufacturer, and this is my wife, Jane. She was in a coma for 40 years, recently on Frozen. Hey, Jane, what would you describe your personal style as? Oh, it's a little tusk of, twice in a row. A little touch of rustic meets modern, you know, like a lot of exposed maple and light woods like that, but a little, I don't mind a little Neo-Confucianism as well, you know, like a little Hong Kong feng shui. And I'm like, where did you learn this? HGTV is like a self-perpetuating cultural entity. It teaches you and then tests you. I don't know what any of this stuff means. People are, and I think this makes me not necessarily unusual, but not the target market. People go, hey, what's your ideal style for like a home? I have no idea. Literally, I'm nearly 30. I've never paid it a single bit of attention. There are things like, I know I have preferences for my living arrangements. I like living in a city. Sincerely. Love living near public transit. I like having a lot of modern amenities nearby. I do care about the weather. I love living in an area that doesn't have a real winter. Because the worst part about it is that people that live in a place with a terrible winter feel smugly superior to you. While you sit around being like, oh, it's January 4th. Maybe I should turn the air conditioning on a little bit. It's a little warm in here. Yeah, we should take that. I don't really want to fight Hush. I'm kind of living in this post-Hush universe right now. I know we got Guppy, but Hush is just, it's just not that good. It's just not that fun to fight, so I'll leave that. But when it comes to like, hey, well, do you prefer, you know, a barreled coffered ceiling or a vaulted ceiling, or, and I'd be like, I really don't know. I don't want to give you a smug answer, which is just like, you know, one that covers my head and doesn't leak in the rain. But like, that's kind of, I don't look up that much. I'm not that tall. Unless the ceilings are that small, in which, like, it just, if you put like, you know, if you airbrushed a Def Leppard cover on the ceiling, I would probably be like, it looks a little ugly. But I'd get over it. When people came over, they'd be like, what's up with your ceiling? And I'd be like, all right, I forgot about that. Yeah, there's a Def Leppard's poured some sugar on me was airbrushed onto the ceiling for some reason. I don't really know why, but you just kind of get over it after a while. Like, I don't know. And I thought maybe, because people, you know, my parents in particular, you know, they told me, when you get older, you're going to care about this stuff. And that gives me a great sense of security, because I guess that means I'm not older. I just don't, I don't come by it honestly, you know, I can't muster any enthusiasm. I don't even think I could fake it, honestly. I just don't even know what I'm looking for. Oh, thank you. Like, without being needlessly reductive, I'm not quite at the level of like, well, I don't care what the food looks like as long as it's calories that I can use to sustain myself. But like, when it comes to homes, I'm kind of like, I don't care. As long as our bed is large enough, then I don't care if it's a 4-poster bed or it's 6 feet off the ground or it's right next to the mattress. You know, doesn't matter. To me. Which is why I default to Kate, because it might matter more to her. And if it does, she might as well, you know, speak up. I'm the easy person to please from a real estate standpoint, I think. Or from a home decor standpoint. This episode has gone by really fast. I do want to finish it up by saying, hey, like, this is not meant as, like, a screed against the tiny house movement. Again, trust me. To some extent, I understand. I do just feel like the people on the show, there's two things that annoy me. That's what I'm summarizing. Wow, my brain is broken. Summering up. If only there was some more elegant word. No, you fool! Summarizing the last 30 minutes. It's two very important points. Protect your constitutionally protected rights. No one else will do it for you. Boards of Canada. Secondarily, if you want a tiny house, don't talk about how big it is when you go inside of it. That's just ridiculous. Thirdly, second to the second point, aka thirdly, just be honest. Why do you want a tiny house? It's movable, it's cheaper. Don't drag the rest of society down just to bring yourself up a little bit, you know? Well, I want a tiny house because modern society is sick with the bug of consumerism. Who are you? You Engels? You're just living in a tiny house. You're not, like, overthrowing the bourgeoisie. Anyway, tiny house, tiny luxury. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, click the like button. It helps out a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.